All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the NFL draft and markets around it with Eric Froton. We'll talk about who's going one and more niche markets beyond that, and then we'll close out with some NBA chat. But Drew, how are you? How did you enjoy the Huskies last night?
Was that last night? No, just a very impressive showing by the Huskies. Congratulations to UConn, our national champions. Back at home, happy to be home. A little quick respite before heading out to the Masters. Now I'm not going to the Masters, although this is, of course, a great week of sports. It was is so much going on right now, and you can put. I'm happy to be putting college basketball on the back burner until the till the next regular season, because we have NFL draft to talk about today, which I'm super excited about. That these we've spent so much time thinking and bemoaning the NBA awards, and while that is extremely fun and close to my heart, it comes in number 2 to NFL draft props. I'll be honest. I love the NFL draft props, and really excited to kind of get into the mix here.
Wow, look at you betraying our friends Emmanuel Quickly and Nikola Jokic because you love Quinn Williams over under 2.5 or whatever. All right, well, we'll get into the NBA at the end and revert back to that for you. But for now, let's bring in Eric Froton, NBC Sports EDGE colleague of ours. Welcome, Eric. Thanks for joining us. Let's get straight into it at the top of the draft. CJ Stroud is a minus 275 favorite to go first overall to the Panthers. Bryce Young plus 225, and then Anthony Richardson plus 700. Beyond that, it gets a little fanciful. Do you agree with the odds? Do you think Stroud should be this heavy of a favorite?
Well, we're seeing Stroud lined in other areas at minus 330, that's sort of a ballpark. So what we're getting here on PointsBet at minus 275 is a pretty solid value, as Bryce Young has been plus 225, which we're seeing at PointsBet. That is pretty much the standard from what I've seen around the industry. So I like the value you're getting at minus 275 here, frankly. I do think that we do see Stroud. He is the legitimate favorite. I was at the Combine along with our Connor Rogers at NBC, and he had a very impressive throwing session. Obviously, Bryce Young comes in at the value 204 pounds. Everybody wanted to see him over that 200-pound mark, and he checked that box. But I do think that it's pretty comfortable with Stroud being the prohibited number 1 favorite, and 275 minus 275 is a pretty good line.
Okay, so this one's tricky because this is maybe the most liquid of all the draft markets, right? It's been up for the longest. We've had a couple of favorites. Minus 275 is a price that still feels a little speculative. And I agree with you that he should be the favorite. We know, the owner went down to his pro day specifically to shake his hand. The comments that, Coach Frank Reich made before they made the trade suggested if they had eyes for anyone, it was Stroud. Like you put all the puzzle pieces on the table, it looks like a CJ Stroud puzzle. The fact that it's only minus 275 to me says it is not known that is their choice. Is that a fair read? And do you think that we kind of have a window here in the next week where you can make basically, throw a dart that we are, that the speculation is correct and get a minus 275 price, or are you going to blink one morning and wake up and this is going to be like minus 2,000?
Well, like you mentioned, we already had the Bryce Young up in the minus 200 range pre-combine. So, we have seen movement in this marketplace. That being said, I do think, the Panthers are trying to obscure what they're doing. They're sending the whole staff to, they sent them both the pro days. They sent them to Anthony Richardson's pro day. They try to make sure that they are keeping their hand hidden. So even though they're trying to do that, they're playing the game. I do feel comfortable at 275. I do think it climbs. I don't think you're going to see it get any lower than that, but that's just my particular read based on talking to people at the Combine and knowing that there is apprehension in some rooms about the size of Bryce Young. So it certainly isn't that sort of apprehension about CJ Stroud.
Yep. I think the thing to remember with draft markets is that the market's got not much idea. Like Aiden Hutchinson at some point last season was minus 250 first overall, with I bet on Aiden Hutchinson to go second overall last year, 5 minutes before the draft, at plus 200. Like, the market just doesn't really know what to do. Think about the day of the NBA draft, after Woj makes his famous tweet, Jabari Smith is minus 1,000 to go first, ends up going third to the Rockets. So I think that with these markets, which are all built around speculation and someone getting a text and then telling another person that it's a text from someone who's actually higher up than the text that they got. Like, that's the stuff that forms these markets, and people don't really have that much of an idea. So something always to be out there.
So it sounds like you agree with me that minus 275 is speculative and that the Panthers may not even really know or have told anyone who their pick's going to be.
Yes, and I think when you're seeing prices in this range, to your point, Drew, that means there's no certainty. If it was done, if it was actually done, then it'd be minus 1,000, or even bigger than that. So anyway, one to watch and play out. Certainly Stroud seems like the clear favorite at the moment. It's just difficult to assess the degree of favorites which he is when it's all innuendo. Eric, do you think that even if Stroud does go one, is Bryce Young a lock to go two? Do you think that top two is pretty much set in stone?
You know, this is one of my favorite early betting markets right now. And some of it has to do with the fact, kind of what you talked about, Jay, in that we do have a lot of speculation in this market. I'll get to my favorite play that ever I kind of rolled out, but I don't think it is a lock that Bryce Young is going just minus 275, right around that range, minus 300 range, to be the number two pick. I don't think that that's set in stone. And like you're saying, do you want to lay almost minus 300, 3-1 odds to go with this? Now, I don't think that that the value is there for Bryce. And the reason why is I love what I'm seeing from the Anthony Richardson is currently, if you shop it around plus 1,400 to be that number two pick. And man, that's a lot of money that you're getting in value. If you want to just throw $50 down on Anthony Richardson to be the number two pick, guy who's the freakiest quarterback to ever test at the combine, freakier than Dante Culpepper, more so than even the great Cam, so coming out of Auburn with one of the greatest college seasons I've ever seen, for Cam Newton. So that is a factor. And you look at, the projection of these quarterbacks. It's not where these guys are at right now. It's where they're going to be. And it doesn't get much more projectable than Anthony Richardson with his frame and his arm.
That's a very fair point, and I have a follow-up on that. But all I can add is the seemingly bright connecting Houston and Bryce. It's not together. I don't really know who exactly. I don't know that he really fits the timeline with the talent that they have on that roster. It feels like they're more of a much longer. They're on much longer arc here before they are truly competing, particularly in the AFC with how weak that roster is. So why not take a chance on a guy like Richardson, right? So I guess, do you understand or remember the nature of why everyone assumed Houston wanted Bryce Young so badly? And do you think that actually Richardson would match their timeline better?
I think that's a great point, and it's absolutely something that I'm factoring in when I'm capping this, because look, they already got Davis Mills there. All right, you've got your young bridge quarterback. He isn't expensive. They're not paying him $15 million a year. You know what I mean? So with that factored in, and you look at, do you want to be middling? Does any team in the midst of a full rebound want to be a middling team? No, you want to go and grab Anthony Richardson, let Davis Mills go and do his thing for a full year, maybe even into the following season. You bottom out, you get another great pick next year. You got the 12 already in this. Do it like the Sixers did it, Sam Presti style. You go and you tear it down to build it back up even stronger. I don't see any reason why they'd want a middle right now and try to have somebody who can come in like that with Bryce Young. You got Davis Mills. Bring in Anthony Richardson, who has the projectable frame, who has all the tools that you want in the shed. Bottom out a little bit, get another great pick next year. Maybe you do what the Bears did this year, where you managed to go and and bottom out and have a top 2 pick. And then you trade down again for somebody who wants Caleb Williams or Drake May, or maybe Quinn Ewers goes and keeps that job over Arch Manning for next year. And you use the quarterback market to your advantage as opposed to where it is in sort of where you're at this year, where it's coming to you. I think that's a great point.
Yep. And the Texans are 20-1 to draft Anthony Richardson. He's 16-1 to go number 2 overall. If you think there's a chance that someone trades up to 2 to get Richardson, you're probably better off just backing the Texans, I would think, at that point. But maybe there is some trade potential. One more quarterback to talk about, the other guy, Will Levis, one of the more polarizing prospects. A lot of people think he's just no good at all. A lot of people, I think, have fallen in love with the frame because he is the prototypical big quarterback. What do you think happens with Will Levis, Eric, and who do you think ultimately drafts him?
Well, what I think with Will Levis is I'm looking at him around that plus 200 to plus, right now plus 220 to be QB3. Well, the Froton Sportsbook is open for anybody who wants to take that. Anybody who wants plus 220, you hit me up in the DM, CF Froton, and I'm ready to take it. Because that ain't happening, everyone, okay? Mr. Mustard, what is it? It is mayonnaise in the coffee. There is a fine line between quirky and weird, okay, with Mr. Levis. When I watch Will, obviously you see him with the bathroom selfies. He can do that. That's great. But his decision-making is very questionable. A lot of this 2022 season that he had, which was a 7-13 big-time throw to turnover-worthy play rate, a lot of it was blamed on that offensive line of his because he did graduate some impact NFL players like Darian Kennard. But look, at some point, the decision-making has to be discerned. And I don't know if Will Levis is the guy. Frankly, I like Hendon Hooker a lot. And I think they're really, really close. And if Hendon Hooker had the chance to throw, I think you probably see him either right there with him or you see him, surpass him because he's coming off an ACL. I just don't see the urgency to draft Will Levis given all these things. I don't think he is conceptually quite as formed as a 24-and-a-half-year-old quarterback, when season rolls around, needs to be. Anthony Richardson is still 20 years old, Yeah. Hendon Hooker is almost 25 as well. I see them being a lot closer than Will Levis to being the number 3 QB. Horrible, horrible investment at plus 220. And I see him slipping down out of the top 10 personally.
Wow. That's not crazy. I will say that the one thing about this draft cycle that has been a breath of fresh air is I expected to hear 9 million comps about Will Levis to Josh Allen. And thankfully, that has not really taken, it's been much more of what's going on with Will Levis? Is he doing this in the interviews on purpose? And it's like, well, what's he doing in the interviews? what are people, what's happening here? So the idea of him sliding is interesting. But, let's just say that the top 4 picks are all quarterbacks and the Colts are picking 4th. I'm starting to waver on them even, utilizing that spot at a quarterback position. They've been connected to everyone. They've done all their due diligence on everyone. There's been rumblings that a team, inside the top 10, like the Raiders, or outside the top 10, like the Titans, might swap with the Cardinals at 3 and take a quarterback there, which is interesting if you're the Titans, and it's interesting if you're the Colts, because if you're the Colts and 2 other teams in your division have picked ahead of you quarterback in this draft, you're really going to take the 4th best guy, and it might, by the way, a guy in Levis who's an enormous project, and you don't really have a lot going on with your roster talent-wise to help that guy develop quickly. It's an interesting kind of dynamic, and I think basically if the Colts pass on him at 4, then you really got to wonder, now you're like, are the Seahawks going to reach? Are the Lions going to reach? That's not a position of need for either of those teams. The Raiders are kind of on record; they want best player available. Realistically, I don't know where his floor is if somebody trades up to 3 and then the Colts pass on him at 4. So, would be interested to see an over under on Levis and get a little bit of exposure to him having a slide based on everything I've heard so far. So I think we are generally in agreement about this quarterback class. Ultimately, any thought or kind of read on the Titans doing something like moving up to third, or the Raiders doing something like moving up to third, and who you think they would take at that position?
Well, I thought that the Titans got last year's number one quarterback, Malik Willis, right? Didn't they draft him? I thought he was supposed to be the guy. Oh, wait, no, he's not. But I would like to see them, at least accept the reality that Malik Willis is not going to be the answer. It seems like, there's been plenty of smoke that is the direction that they're heading. I wonder what's going to happen there, because as we kind of discussed, I think you need to get up to 3, because why go and force the issue with Will Levis to move up? It doesn't make any sense to me at all whatsoever. So they're going to have to do it. 11-3 is a pretty solid jump. I think that Arizona is probably going to be in the same, vein that we saw Chicago with, where they went down to 9. They were happy to take the 8-pick drop to get as much capital as they possibly can. And I think that makes a lot of sense for Arizona, where they're happy to take the best cornerback, the best defensive player who slips to that range. They can go down 11 and not particularly hurt what their plan is going to be, if that's what is going to get them the most return. So I think that Tennessee has to get up to 3 if that's what they're looking to do to, acquire that quarterback of the future, because it's not going to make a lot of sense to do so at 11, since obviously I'm not a big Will Levis guy.
Yep. I think Ryan Tannehill remains the most underrated quarterback in the league. I don't know why they're so desperate to move on from him. All right, before we get to the defensive players in the draft, a reminder to download the Roto World app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, so on PointsBet, first defensive player, Will Anderson is a heavy -400 favorite. Is this done, Eric? Is Will Anderson just going to be the first defensive player taken?
I feel really good about it, obviously, and that's why he is the favorite. But if we're looking at draft position, that 3.5, it is heavily juiced to the over, and that's because what we've just been talking about. It's -400 in some places, right around that range. And that's because it's a virtual lock. We're going to see, Arizona trade out of that. So if you're looking at that 3.5 pick, why would you ever go and, from a logic standpoint, go and invest in that? It just doesn't make sense, And then what I think is really the issue here for Anderson is, what if he does? You do see Arizona go and bump down maybe to 11. That really opens things up. Because we're seeing a lot of Devin Witherspoon, Christian Gonzalez. They're being mocked very heavily in that, 5, 6, 7 range. We're going to see one of them go in that range. Is it a case where there's just a cornerback needy team that is going to reach ahead of that? I mean, I think that there is a possibility that happens. I don't think there is a possibility that Will Anderson is going at 3. I love the 3.5 over. I mean, it's -400, but I just don't see that being a reality. So, that's kind of where I think that market shakes out right now. It's kind of, you're taking a leap of faith at that point, at that 3.5.
Okay. So is it fair to say if the Cardinals can't make a deal and stick with 3, your operating assumption, Will Anderson goes, right?
It would be my operating assumption. Yes. That makes a lot of sense.
If the Cardinals trade down into the 7 or 11 range, and quarterback goes 1, 2, 3. The Colts may take quarterback 4. If the Seahawks with pick 5, are they for sure a Will Anderson guy, or is there someone else that fits the Seahawks?
I feel great about the Seahawks obviously going that direction. They've obviously signed Geno Smith, so they have the bridge for the next couple of years at the very least. He's only 31 years old. I think that is the most logical choice. They got Tariq Woolen last year, so why do they need to go cornerback? Jalen Carter has obviously hurt his particular value. It makes all the sense in the world.
Okay, so then one more tricky question. If it goes quarterback 1, 2, 3, and the Colts have already decided to pass on Levis and try to make a Godfather offer for Lamar Jackson, what player do they choose at 4? And could it be a defensive surprise?
It absolutely could be. I mean, gosh, they decide not to go Levis and they don't trade up. It could be anything. It really could be. Who knows with Jim Irsay and the Reich, contingent in there. Heck, I think they'd probably entertain a trade down at that point, especially if they're not going to take Will Levis. Why would you stay there if you're the Colts, where you have so much needs? And they don't even, do they even know who their quarterback's going to be next year? That'd be a pretty bold move on their part. But hey, they're a team that is much like Houston. If they are being real with themselves, they are in a rebuild. They're coming from the studs, and they're going to have to do a lot of work. So sure, why not? Why not kick that around at number 4 for Anderson?
Yep. Let's talk about Jalen Carter. News broke yesterday that he is not meeting with teams picking outside of the top 10. Perhaps risky, given that his draft prop is 7.5, which is fairly close to 11. Do you expect ultimately, Eric, that Carter will go in the first 7 picks?
Man, that's one of the great unknowns, really, because at the combine he's 20 minutes away from his podium session. Obviously, he goes out and gets charged with 2 misdemeanors. Then the effect of that on him obviously carried over to his pro day, where he couldn't even finish the workout. This is football here. That's a concern for me. And we're talking about rarefied air of the top 7 picks, whereas we discussed, there's a lot of potential movement coming in those first 4 picks. And if four quarterbacks go, then we're looking at a real numbers crunch. We saw a couple mocks come out recently with potential Bijan Robinson slipping in the top 10. The Bears, they didn't expect Carter to be really available at number 9, so they hadn't even really kicked the tires on him. They've been bringing him in. They've been talking about, doing their due diligence, kicking the tires on him. I don't think I can confidently look at over 7.5 plus 120. That's not enough for me to take the under 7.5 minus 155. You're going to actually make me pay, plus minus juice to go and do that. Give me the plus 120 at over 7.5. I'm sorry, but all these factors, the Laramie Tunsil, issues, we're not talking about the bong and the gas mask. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a guy who couldn't finish a workout. I can't do it. I want the plus money. Give me the plus 120 at over 7.5.
Okay. I like it. Last one for you, Eric. Is there a favorite bet that you've got on the board that we haven't covered already?
Well, it is something that we've kind of gone around a little bit, but I'm putting 2 bets kind of in conjunction. Okay. We talked about the minus 160 for Mr. Anderson to go to AR to go under 4.5, that pick. I mean, minus 160 is a pretty smoking deal here. Okay. As discussed. You couple that with, as Jay correctly pointed out, you're looking at 20-1 odds for AR to be the number 2 pick. Okay. If you're putting it together, I like taking AR at minus 160, all right, to go under 4.5. And then, which I think that's happening. Okay. That is happening as we talked. We just went through the Colts. We went through all that stuff. I know that's happening. Minus 160. I feel great about that. And then you pair it with AR at plus 2,000, okay, to be the number 2 pick. I think that is a double end waiting to happen. Worst case scenario, you get a free roll at AR going number 2. Frankly, at $2,000, you could possibly roll with that. And it's free money because he's going under 4.5. I think that is the profit center of this young, undeveloped market. I think it's going to make somebody $2,000 if it all goes well for free.
Eric, I got news for you. We can figure out a way to get more than $2,000 down on that. So don't sweat that, man. But no, I just have to say I agree 100% with this entire breakdown. The Houston Texans last year had the 3rd overall pick. Everyone knew they wanted cornerback, and they kept it a secret. They were going to take Stingley over Sauce Gardner until the week of the draft. Like, the idea that it is somehow known that these guys all have heart eyeball emojis texting Bryce Young clips between each other. Like, no, I don't think it's even close to like a done deal that they know for sure that Bryce Young is their guy at 2. And, I mean, for all we know, they are looking at longer timeline development of a guy like Richardson. So, yeah, I think that's what we do.
I'm with you, my friend. Let's do it.
Poor Bryce Young, just minus 200. Only weeks ago, and now he's fallen out of the top 2, apparently. All right, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell people where to follow you and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. I have my offensive tackles rankings column coming out today, in fact. I'll be breaking down the top 10 and going through pretty much the top 30 in terms of where I have them ranked for the upcoming draft. So certainly be on the lookout for that on NBC Sports Edge.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining, Eric, and best of luck with everything.
Thanks,
all right. Before we get into the association, every season is draft season. Drew, get your RotoWorld Draft Guide bundle today and dominate your football, baseball, and basketball drafts. Packed with profiles, rankings, projections. Order today and get all 3 RotoWorld Draft Guides for the price of 2. Plus use promo code BERRY and save an extra 20% at checkout. All right. Pretty big slate. There was some respite last night for pro basketball fans like myself. Had you gone on in the background, was largely reading a book. Now it's back at it tonight. The MVP market, huge swing game tonight with Joel Embiid hosting the Boston Celtics on national television. If Embiid loses this and has lost 6 of 9, and in his 3 big games, he ducked Jokic, lost to Giannis, and then lost at home to the Celtics on national television, I think it's going to be pretty hard to give him MVP. So that is certainly the epicenter of the association tonight. Some other big games on tap as well. A suddenly highly relevant Timberwolves-Nets game.
Big time.
Taking place at the Barclays. Hawks, Bulls with huge relevance for the 8, 9, 10 positions. And then even games like the Lakers, who all of a sudden, if they win out, they can get the 5 seed. So certainly stock up for them lately. And
wait a second. Whoa. Is that for real? The Lakers can get into the 5 with the win out?
I believe so, yeah. If they win out, I think they get the 5 seed. Yeah, which is ridiculous. They probably don't want that necessarily because you don't want to play Phoenix in the first round, but yeah, the Lakers, look, there is a lot of chat about
better
the
than
Lakers
being in the play-in.
Yeah, all of a sudden, 5 seed. I would not be betting the Lakers to win the West, and I would advise everyone against that because if you do think they can win the West, which, they've got the upside to do it, I think that's within the realm of possibility. There is just no way that you are getting series prices to roll over that's going to add up to less than the outright price for the Western Conference at the moment, which some places are like plus 900 on the Lakers when they're going to have to play every series on the road, almost certainly. So don't do that. Just bet them series by series if you think there's an edge on the Lakers. Let's talk about the Celtics Sixers. Right now it is Sixers minus 2.5. Totals 227. Rob Williams is being rested, guessing because it's a back-to-back for the Celtics, and they want him to just play on the back end at home to Toronto tomorrow. Jaylen Brown is questionable. I'm going to play the guessing game and say that Jaylen Brown plays because he has traveled with the team to Philadelphia. And if you've had 4 days off and you're questionable with back pain, I would think that he's just going to play if he's traveling with the team. So I would certainly lean that way in terms of pricing in his potential playing or not playing. And yeah, what do you think of this line?
I think it's wrong team favored, which is never a good thing this late in the season when you have this strong of a disagreement with the market. But I agree with you. I think I read Jaylen Brown questionable as probable. And, the absence of Robert Williams is certainly going to be felt. I mean, this could be an offensive, boat race. I don't think that I don't think Celtics are really geared up to stop Embiid at all without Robert Williams on the floor. But at the same time, the way that their wings can attack the Sixers defense, like this should be a pretty awesome game to watch with lots of explosive scoring runs, and I would say that the total is a couple points too low as well. But I think taking the Celtics on the money line against the Sixers makes sense. Even though this is today and tomorrow are two of the weirdest days of the entire schedule in terms of rest and things going on, because everybody got the day off yesterday, and there are so many teams doing back-to-back on Wednesday. And so everybody's kind of neutral rest right now for the most part, with the exception of Boston, Philly. Philly is still on the tail end of a little bit of a lot of playing, while Boston does have a ton of run up for this game in particular. I think you saw with just the intensity of what Boston brought to that Milwaukee game, treating it like a playoff dress rehearsal. I would expect much of the same tonight from the Celtics. I thought their offensive sets and some of the creativity that they showed offensively, getting guys looks from three, and then just some of the they were getting a little too cute, if we want to be honest, because they could get to the rim pretty aggressively, even with Brook Lopez out there, and they were still kicking it out to a lot of extra 3-point attempts that you would have expected could have just been easy finishes, but it didn't matter because they made all their threes. I would expect to see similar creativity offensively from the Celtics team tonight, and I think they ultimately get the win. But even more than that, a loss here by the Sixers pretty much is you can start carving the gravestone on Giannis MVP 2023.
Okay, yeah. There's a few things with this game, so I think it's an interesting game just to kind of tackle some concepts just around betting game to game. One, I think it's really important with game to game NBA that you understand injury reports and how different teams treat them. Questionable means something more for some teams than others. For instance, like LeBron is listed questionable every game and he just plays every game. There was a stretch for like 3 weeks earlier in the season when Joel Embiid was being listed questionable every game with his foot, and he just played every single game, just about. And so with Boston, they listed Brown and Tatum questionable their last game against Utah, and then they both got ruled in. The fact that they've had 4 days off and Brown is traveling with the team makes me think he's very likely to play. So particularly with the NFL, probably even more so than the NBA, just understanding how teams use their injury reports is really important to betting game by game. And so I think that's relevant with this game. Secondly, I think the market has a very difficult time pricing in guys carrying niggling injuries because you can't have certainty around it, and so you default to treating the guy like he's healthy if he's playing when there's not that much of a sample size. I don't think Harden is right at all. He does not look like the same guy that he was 3 weeks ago. He is really laboring, and I don't think Joel Embiid is right either. He was scoring high 30s every game in 3 quarters. And the only reason the MVP race is still an MVP race is because he kept on not playing fourth quarters and getting to 50 for like 2 weeks straight. Because had those games been closer, he would have been putting up 50 and the race would probably feel done. But it's not. And now the past 4 games, which have all been close, and he's been playing the fourth quarters of all of them, he hasn't gotten to 30 in any of them. And he took 25 shots against the Bucks. And I don't know, he looks fine enough when he's out there, but there's just something missing with Embiid at the moment. And there's definitely something missing with Harden. So I don't think the market can bake that in enough. And if you think that like the Celtics closed +2 at the Bucks. Bucks were on a back-to-back. Rob Williams was playing, but you balance that out with the fact that the Bucks were just 5.5-point favorites to the full-strength Sixers at home. I just don't think that coheres with the Celtics being 2.5-point dogs to the Sixers now. And I expect that Brown will get ruled in, and I suspect that the line is going to close closer to +1 around that type of range when Brown gets ruled in. So I think the Celtics are a bet at 2.5. And then the last thing I'll say is that the MVP market is likely going to stay up during this game, and the market's not going to react properly. If Embiid is getting stomped, then the market is going to drift in from like -230 to -210 when the proper adjustment should be like money. Should be closer to now anyway. So that's just another thing to watch.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to ask you if you thought that was going to stay up. We've covered this to death and people are probably sick of it. So sorry, but it's the most interesting thing to talk about in the NBA right now. So sorry. Even yesterday we covered this at length and I thought we did a decent job of kind of characterizing the race. The market didn't really react correctly to what everyone is out there saying. How many podcasts did you listen to yesterday where and clips and written pieces? And I don't get the sense that Embiid should be even close to the favorite right now, let alone the clear favorite in the market. Like, is your opinion changed since yesterday? Have you heard anything that I missed?
I mean, I think minus 230 has always been a joke anyway, and that he should be closer to even money regardless, and possibly even above even money at this point. But I mean, yesterday we had Kendrick Perkins doing the rounds on First Take in NBA Today saying that he's voting for Giannis. Michael Wilbon, who has a vote, said he is flipped and is voting for Giannis after the Sunday game. Tony Kornheiser doesn't have a vote, but is somewhat representative as well of that kind of group of voters. He said he would vote for Giannis. Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer said as well yesterday that Giannis is still number one on his ballot. Now, I think most of these people were leaning that way anyway. And Giannis, if you take the straw poll from Bontemps as truth, Giannis has got to flip about 25 votes. And so it's a question of, can he really do that in a week and a half, which already includes getting stomped by Boston by 41, also includes stomping Joel Embiid, completely outplaying him. So I think he can. I just think it's a very narrow path. And I was on a thread last night where I was mathing it out, and I thought that basically the way that I see Giannis' path to MVP is Embiid loses tonight. Giannis goes 3-0 his next three games, which are at Washington, which is basically like Washington doesn't have any players left. So they're 13-point favorites minus 1,000. So he beats Washington, beats Chicago tomorrow on national television, and then beats a Memphis team in Milwaukee on Friday that's probably got nothing to play for at that point. So you look at that, and then Jokic as well either continues to sit or comes back and loses to Phoenix in a couple of days. And so at that point, I think that Giannis would win MVP, but that's a pretty narrow path. So forgetting the Memphis game on Friday, if he just goes 2-0 and Embiid loses tonight, Jokic either sits or loses, I make that to be like plus 320. And at that point, I think that he would be the favorite to win. So I think that certainly there's still some 8-1 around on Giannis. I think that's a bet. And I think Jokic at plus 260 is a bet as well. But I would wait for this game tonight to unfold first, because the market's not going to move properly.
Okay. That all sounds perfectly square to me. If you want some more betting advice for tonight's game, Oklahoma City, Golden State is going to be sneaky good for a half. And then Golden State's going to absolutely blow them out in the second half. I'm just looking at sort of the general trends, and Oklahoma City is a straightforward defense on them. That's going to be a runaway second half. So love the Warriors. I only laying 8, but I think you're going to get an even better number in game entry. Yep.
Yeah, the poor Thunder reeling a little bit. I desperately need them to make the play-in tournament, Drew. I've got a lot of 18-1 Thunder play-in, and very much want the Dallas Mavericks to sit Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving ASAP, because I'm not confident in the Thunder doing it by themselves without a little help from Mark Cuban. But hopefully that will be okay regardless. All right. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks for everyone watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. Thanks to Eric Froton for joining us. If you're listening to us as a podcast, don't forget to rate and subscribe. From Jay Croucher and Drew Dinsick, we'll be back tomorrow.